Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andresa.
So in today's episode, ladies, we have Heather Blankenship. She is an investor who's very schooled in RV parks, self-storage, and mobile home parks. I think one of the things I got most out of today's episode with her was that she gave a lot of clarity around analyzing markets. I'm a multifamily investor, and she was able to kind of twist that around and say, this is what you want to look at when you're actually really looking at markets for RV parks, not multifamily. And you'll definitely blow your mind, because I thought it was fascinating that what we think one thing, and she presented it in a very different way, which I thought was very, very helpful for this particular niche.
And I'm just going to give you guys a heads up. We were very selfish. We asked her to dumb down RV and all the other different, I would say, options that there is in this niche. But one thing that is really impressive about Heather is that she is a single mom of 3 kiddos, and she has built an amazing portfolio, and she's currently managing 30 plus employees. So she knows all about what scaling means and taking yourself out of the equation so your business can run as a machine. And we went there, we talked about it. Why women it's having trouble trusting people and hiring. And she says something very special about the difference between trusting people and hiring people. So if you want to know more about this, check this episode out.
Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz.
And this is Andresa.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Investor Show, where we are all about empowering women to live a financially free and balanced life. So thank you for coming back with us for another week where we get a chance to get inside the amazingness of one of these amazing women out there that are doing it. They're making it happen every day. And there's so many of them. So Heather, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for sharing your experience and your knowledge with our community and our listeners.
Happy to be here. I really appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah, excited to jump into Heather's story and everything RV park investing, which I'm selfishly, and Andresa and I are selfishly so pumped about. So we're just going to ask you questions that serve us. No, just joking. We're really, really pumped to have you on here today and dive into that niche, really powerful niche. But Andresa, as we always like to do, right? We like to really connect, even though we can't see all of you amazing women and men who listen to our show. We like to connect with you. So what's happening, Miss Andresa?
You know, this week, I want to share something personal that happened this week, because we all, for the moms out there that, juggle kids and school, it's a crazy time right now, and building a business and building a portfolio on our own terms. You can hear me that sometimes it's like it's a struggle, right? And one of the things that I learned growing up with my parents, I have the memories that I have around 6, 7 years old are memories, very like vivid experiences that I had. And one of them, I think you guys already know about this, like the shower with my dad and my sisters was a dangerous situation. I'm not repeating that, because he made it like a slide with soap all over the bathroom, and we slided, and let's keep that part, right? But I really remember the experience in the music. We always had music, taking showers. I take shower listening to music or whatever audio I have it. And I say, you know what? I'm going to transform the moment that I have this boring task that I need to fight with my son every day for him to come take a shower into an enjoyable experience. So I got the speaker that you gave me for Christmas, Liz, and it's in our bathroom.
Cool.
So now Lorenzo comes and we do a concert inside the bathroom. I'm telling you, it's a little bit more water going down the drain, but it is fun. It is fun. And he can't wait. He's like, what music we're going to dance today, mommy? And it's been a blast this entire week. So I transformed this like quote unquote boring but necessary task into an experience. And talking about experience, Liz and I are super beyond exciting to share with all of you about the Investor Con that is going to be happening in Charlotte, North Carolina on the 23rd and 24th of June. And I guarantee you, it's not going to be your traditional boring real estate conference. We are planning a full circle transformational experience designed for women's needs, goals, and schedules in mind. That is what it is. It's just a wonderful experience. I will not tell you today about the keynote, but if I were you, I will click on the link below and really get your ticket today and reserve your spot. More to come, ladies.
More to come. Yes, we are so pumped. We are so pumped. But without further ado here, I want to transition to Heather and her story and her background. And Heather, we always kind of kick things off with our guests to, what propelled you to get involved in investing and what inspired you to get involved in this particular journey?
Let me think, 11 years ago, I was driving across the country in a camper from Florida to California. And I was like, hey, it's just renting parking spots. This has got to be easy. It's not renting parking spots. That would be like owning a parking garage, and it is not that. And so by the time I got to California, I had been Google searching RV parks for sale and campgrounds for sale. And I found one that was in bankruptcy in the area that I lived in. And I didn't even realize that RV parks were real estate at the time. And I called the bank. I was 26 years old and they wanted $3.2 million. And they're like, how much money do you have? And I was like, I don't have any. So
what are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't have any. And so because it was 2011, and banks that still had things left on their books from the collapse, they were willing to do loans that you couldn't get today. And today, no one would give me that loan. I shouldn't ask for that loan. Sam Zell, who's a really famous owner of warehouse space, and he's huge in mobile home parks and RV parks. He has a book, and in his book, he says, I was successful because I didn't know I shouldn't have been. And it's the same thing, because I shouldn't have asked for the loan. They shouldn't have given it to me. And it was a huge blessing. But I do a ton of stuff on TikTok, and I'm in the middle of being beat up on TikTok by all these people who are like, yeah, but you were just lucky. Okay, you're lucky when you win the lottery. I had to go figure out how to pull a bankrupt property out of something and figure out how to make it profitable. And it all kind of started there. And ever since, I've been obsessed with all things real estate. I own RV parks, mobile home parks, and Section 8 multifamily now.
I love that. And there's no such a thing as luck without courage. You have the courage to first ask, first research for it, ask, and figure it out. There isn't such a thing, right? And then luck does not happen from 2011 to now. You're not going to keep like getting lucky here. You're just getting smarter and smarter, know how you can pivot. I'm selfishly very, very happy to interview you today because I have so many questions about RV. I feel that it became with the pandemic. That's what my assumption is. It's a niche that really like people are looking for now to become like more like a lifestyle beyond just investing. So all those people that couldn't travel were like, listen, let me just get an RV here so we all can, work from whatever it is. And then all the investors was like, well, this is great. Now everybody is there. So from an investor standpoint, it's my understanding that I can invest in RV parks in different ways, own the land or own the structure. Break it down for us, like dumb it down for us, please. For people that are looking to do that, like dumb it down for us.
Yeah. So to talk about what you just said, Andresa, it's interesting because that's one of the most common questions I get. Like, Heather, is this just because of COVID? And in reality, it's not. If you look at the trends over the last 10 years, the industry has had steady growth year over year. Yes, the last couple of years kind of double or tripled in growth compared to what the previous years had, but it's been a growing industry for the last 20, 30 years. It's not a new thing. It did get more mainstream attention because we were paying attention. Everybody was sitting at home.
We
trying
were
to figure out
home watching TV. Yes.
trying to figure out what people were doing. And so when you're talking about there's different ways to invest in RV parks, you're absolutely right. And so one of the biggest misconceptions are that RV parks and mobile home parks are the same thing. They kind of interchange the words with trailer park, mobile home park, affordable housing, mixed with RV parks and campgrounds. All these things kind of get grouped in the same thing, and they're very, very different. Mobile home parks are usually affordable housing, and large investors, institutional investors, want to just own the land and have all what you call tenant-owned homes, as opposed to park-owned homes, which is meaning like you own both the land and the structure, like you were talking about. So my mobile home parks, I like having park-owned homes and the land, because I can rent them out on Section 8. So if I own the lot itself, the land, and the mobile home, I can rent those out for $1,200 to $1,400 a month on Section 8, which is awesome. Those larger institutional investors don't want to do that because they don't want the maintenance that's involved in all of that. They're used to the passive mailbox money of just owning the land, which makes sense. But where I already own multifamily and have a team in place, it's no big deal to us to have those maintenance calls and things like that. It doesn't bother us. Now, when you transition over to RV parks, you've really got a couple different types of parks. So you've got long-term RV parks, which are affordable housing and very similar to the mobile home parks that we just talked about. But typically the owners don't own the campgrounds. They own the campers. They just own the land. And the difference in a campground is they're upkeeping some other structures. They're going to have bathhouses they're keeping up with. There's typically an office or a check-in building. Oftentimes they have swimming pools and all these different amenities that they're keeping up in addition to that. But those are long-term, usually affordable housing. There's some really nice ones in Florida and California and Arizona that are more like retirement communities, and they're beautiful with sidewalks and great landscaping and really nice places to live. So they're not the same stigma as some of the more rundown ones that people think of. Then you've got short-term parks, which are literally like running a resort. People's average stay is 3 days. They're on vacation. It's usually families. And those parks have more than 10 streams of income. It's a different form of real estate because you're running an active business with a ton of employees and all kinds of stuff going on, kind of like running a resort. Then you've got some stuff in between that have long-term and short-term mixed together. You got seasonal parks, you got man camps. There's all different niches within this niche.
Wow.
Jesus, we can go on and on here.
I know.
What's it called? A man cave?
A man camp. A man camp. Be in like Texas or maybe in the Northwest when you see like a pipeline coming through, or oil workers. And so temporarily that land is worth a ton of money because they've got all these workers who were there, maybe for a couple years for whatever the project is. But when you're underwriting these deals, you could get in huge trouble if you try and value that man camp the same as an existing property that, has 10 or 20 different forms of employment supplying the area, because at the end of that project, that property is not really worth a whole lot.
I completely had a different idea when you said man camp. But I like your definition.
No, I gotta share. What did you think?
I'm like, that men came together to like support each other and like help each other. And they, I don't know, maybe like
probably those two.
We need to do an investor camp now.
Well, sidebar. We did a really funny story, but we did a investing with your spouse session and webinar for our Strive members this past weekend. We said, bring your spouse. So we had it was really cool. We had all of our members and their spouses and partners. And my husband said, I want to do invest him. We're going to do invest him. And I'm going to take all the guys, and all the guys were like thumbs up. It was cute. I'm like, stop stealing our name. Thank you very much. It's trademarked. No. Oh my gosh. So let's, there's a lot to this. And I think a lot of people think it's very simple. And I think it's probably a little more complicated than all of us may realize. Now, just like in real estate, when you really start to understand it, it gets simpler, right? Like multifamily or large apartment complexes can be really big to people who don't understand them. And then you start to break it down. You're like, okay, this makes sense. So someone is intrigued to invest in this niche. What are some of their first steps? Because again, we really want to be mindful, like women, Us women get a little overwhelmed very easily. We know like, oh, we're not going to do anything versus like, okay, let's break this down. So if this is something that I, want to explore, you got a multifamily investor or a flipper, and they're like, this is something I'm intrigued by. What are some of those initial steps? What are some of those, even from an analysis perspective? Is it similar where you would look at comps? And so walk us through some of those initial kind of where to start.
So it's similar if you understand commercial real estate. Is, as you know, looking at single family homes or really even duplexes, some of those smaller multifamily are very different than looking at those larger apartment complexes, because you have to understand a cap rate and going through people's profit and loss statements and understanding what should and shouldn't be there to put stuff in and pull stuff out where you need to. So if you've learned about multifamily already, or you're familiar with multifamily, it's pretty simple. The art is in learning what should and shouldn't be in that profit and loss statement so that, you're missing $200,000 in payroll because mom and pop have been pretending to be 4 employees, and you're going to have to hire those people when mom and pop leave and you're now operating the property, learning what things you're missing. 2 of the most important things when you're looking for RV parks or glamping resorts, because the outdoor hospitality industry in general kind of groups RV parks and glamping resorts together because a lot of the things are very similar. So 2 of the most important things that you're looking for are going to be zoning and permitting, making sure you're properly zoned and permitting, because most people are asking about development right now of RV parks or glamping resorts because they see the shiny objects of the awesome tiny homes and the glamping tents and all these fun things that we get to see. So your zoning and permitting, and then your utilities. Your utilities will literally make or break your deal, because oftentimes they're not on city water and city sewer, because some of these properties, they may not be remote, but they're not going to be right in the middle of town all the time. So it's also not always well and septic like we're used to looking at when we see multifamilies. You start digging in and you've got weird things like lagoons and wastewater treatment plants and pump lift stations and all these different options that could be literally the same cost as the property if something went wrong. So you could make a really bad decision on your utilities, or you may not be able to have them at all. I had a student last semester, we call them semesters, who couldn't figure out how to get water to his property. And he had this awesome, beautiful property in the North Carolina mountains, but he can't figure out how to get water there. And it's kind of no-go on a project when you can't get.
Well, last summer, I love to go to Stone Harbor for a couple of days, right? And in the middle of the week, I don't know what was going on. I think everything shut down. My son was here, and I was like, listen, might as well pack and go for a couple of days to the beach in the middle of the week. I couldn't find any hotel, right? So I was like, let me look around and see. And I found this. Now I don't know how to name it properly, what that was, right? I think it was a mix, as per you're saying. There was a mix of people that came with those huge RVs attached to their trucks. I was like, this is a hotel, buddy. Like, what is this that you're bringing, like this spaceship coming in? And then there were those that were in place to be rented, like short term. It's like, I wanna try this out. And we stay there for 3 days. They have this small office, but then like my investor mind start kicks in, right? Like, okay, the check-in over here, you guys can improve this and that, or or how can we do this faster, more efficient? And I started walking around, and some people have their own decorations and things. I was like, you're not temporary. You're here.
You would not believe the amount of stuff people bring for 3 days. Like, they have one extra vehicle to bring all of their outside stuff. They might be.
Oh my gosh. I was like, there was one of them that had like a tiki bar. Am I saying this right? Tiki
yes.
bar. I was like, what do you do here? Parties. But the bottom line, I was like, this is good. This is good. This is just like, I look at the structure and everything else, but in my head, I was like, there's no freaking way in hell I can duplicate this without knowing it or not making like very like big, basic rookie mistakes. So when you look back, what were the mistakes that you made at the beginning of your investor career that you're like looking back, you're just, oh my gosh, I wish I knew what I know now, that type of thing. Let's not talk about the mistakes, but the lessons that you learned from them.
I think it's a lesson that we all have to learn, that if you're so focused on working in your business, you can't work on your business. And because I had bought something I didn't know anything about, I had to work in it to actually learn how to manage people and operate the property, to even pay that first payment. I had to learn the operations and what was going on. And what I learned is I should have hired a manager for that first property a lot earlier so that I could focus more on my business instead of being in the weeds in it. Yes, those years of working in the weeds definitely are what got me here, but I wish I would have hired a manager sooner so that I could have grown a lot faster.
Just to piggyback on that, in terms of like property management, because, we self-manage so many of our units early on, and that was helpful, right? I found that to be, in hindsight, really, really helpful because you get a chance to learn the business. But then it's like, okay, this is time to transition. You're getting into larger assets and it just makes sense. For this niche, because I know I can understand you're hiring a team. You're hiring an operations manager to manage that park, right? So is it the same type of approach where there's actually teams that you can hire like that? You could have hired that manager along with their team to manage that size of RV park. And it's just like, you're going to pay them a percent. Like you would pay 6 to 10%, a traditional property manager. I'm thinking multifamily. Is it the same type of thing? Or you're saying I should have hired somebody who would have really worked for me? I'm curious to get in, like, are there different approaches in this niche? I'm just trying to get my head around it because, again, I'm thinking more on the multifamily.
Yeah, in this niche, almost everyone self-manages in some form. And when we say self-manage, not necessarily the self-manage you think of when people are starting out and they own a couple units. And there are a few property management companies in our space, but it's not the same as multifamily where you have really fabulous ones that have processes in place. They've been around for years. For sure they're going to do a great job. They're in every market. Right. We don't really have that.
Okay.
And so for us, you can either be mom and pop working and running your business, or you can self-manage. And I'm self-managing from 900 miles away. So it's not the same as when we think of having 5 or 6 units and you're fixing the toilet and taking all the phone calls. I don't talk to the customers or the tenants. I have about 30 employees and I'm managing my managers at this point. So I hired my mother as my COO a couple of years ago. And I'm even further removed from that because she's the one managing a lot of them at this point and overseeing some of that day to day. I have an intern that's converting to replace mom's position very soon. And that'll even remove us even further. So it's self-managing, but not in the same respect that you think of in those beginning years.
I love that. And I want to I have a couple of other more specific nitty-gritty questions, but I can't just let go of this question based on what you're saying about removing yourself, right? As you scale, you hire a first person or your first team, and then you still managing being the operator. And then the second level, I would say second level of scaling is when you hire an operator, a CEO or a director of operations, and then step out even more. And then you keep stepping out completely and substituting yourself. That's the magic, right? A lot of the women in our community, here's what they say about hiring, right? I don't trust them. I don't trust them. And how can I trust somebody? How can I open up my books? Or I'm embarrassed. Like I'm not that organized and they're going to see everything. Or I don't have the money to pay them. Or I don't have the systems in place to hire them. All of those. The trust thing is what is holding a lot of women back. So from your experience, what did you do in order to overcome that first hire and then all those 30 hires that you had to do in order to step out and really focus on your core genius?
When you buy a property that large as your first investment, that, for example, to kind of explain the moving parts of that, that property now brings in $2.5 million a year. So you are getting your butt kicked. There are 500 people there at any given time. There is no option but to hire people. Your trust issues literally don't matter. I mean, sure, you're not going to share the books and things like that with people you don't know and right away, but there's 41 short-term rental units, meaning camping cabins and meaning the tiny house kind of things and glamping tents and all these different moving parts. You literally can't do it by yourself. So I think being able to hire somebody versus trusting people are two very different things. As you grow, you won't have a choice but to hire people. Otherwise, you can't grow because you can only physically do so much. There's a certain size that you can get to, and you either hire or that's the size you're going to be. The trust thing's a totally different level for that. And so the first time that somebody had access to my credit cards or any extra something that somebody might be a little bit nervous about, I had hired my best friend as my part-time assistant because she was going through some things in life and needed a job. And I was like, I'm really at a point where I need an assistant. And so I knew that I could give her my credit card information, and that was kind of going into it. So taking those baby steps of being able to do that is different. But I also have noticed some young entrepreneurs who are willing to give all their passwords and credit cards and information away to just everybody. And those are the stories you hear where like stuff's stolen and you're in really bad shape. So no one has access to my bank accounts and things like that, except for literally my mother. And if I'm not married, so if I had a spouse, that would be my spouse that had access to that. So deciding what you're going to give them access to doesn't mean that they have access to everything. And as far as my books go, this year, meaning 2021, was the first year anybody besides my accountant had access to my quote unquote books. My intern that I was telling you about earlier is an accounting major. So he did all the bookkeeping and all of that kind of stuff, but he still didn't have access to any money. So if the people that have access to books and money, meaning credit cards versus are different people, it's kind of like the government has these checks and balances. You can't give all of the control or access to one person. So kind of splitting it up makes it a little easier too.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? I feel
Yes.
like I went in circles with that.
No, you did, because it's just like this. Oh, I don't trust, so I'll stay this small, or I trust so much, and here we go. Here's all my passwords. And I think that there's a process, and there isn't only one process that women say, oh, if I don't follow that, then I'm not gonna scale. There's different ways to do it. What I really like stand for women is that let go. Just let go, substitute yourself. I don't give a shit. I am not, my value is not what I do. So being busy does not mean anything. I'd rather grow my business, step out, serve the people, and go. I don't want to be doing a lot of things. I don't want it. I just don't want it. So
it's interesting that you say that. I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and this really successful investor told me, Heather, you can either have control or you can have growth. So you've got to decide which you want.
Simple, right? One or another. And there's no wrong or right or wrong, but it just can't be both. I don't want to know. Let's just go. So for all the stripers that are on my pod right now, systems and processes in place, hiring is a big deal, and it is a big deal. So that's what we're looking to do. By the end of the pod, they're going to be like, I have nothing on my plate. It's like, great. We achieve our goal.
It's interesting too. It's something you did beautifully. And I don't know if everyone would do this. And it's interesting to think about your own way, your own style, your own, what gets you up in the morning. But you created this growth for yourself in your 20s. And like, literally, like you said, you didn't have any other choice, right? If you're going to buy this property the way you wanted to do it in your mid 20s, no experience in doing this, you'd almost like you burned the bridge, right? People say burn the bridge. And, I think that's really powerful. And that then created this beautiful growth of a business and a niche. So, it's scary for a lot of people, a lot of women listening, like, I'm sure there's women who are saying to themselves, God, Heather's amazing, but I don't think I could have done that.
And,
Sure.
we come up with all the reasons we couldn't have done it.
Right.
and all the reasons that it's scary. And I got pregnant with my first child and had my first child that same year that I was trying to figure that out. And I had 3 babies right in a row. And I can remember there's a picture somewhere, one of my maintenance managers with 1 kid strapped to him. And I've got an office lady with 1 kid strapped to her. And I'm running around with the other one. Like, you literally just make it work. Like, you can come up with all the reasons that you can't, or if you just jump in and start doing it, like you said, you have no choice. You just keep going.
I love that. We all make it work, right? There's no like bad or good or wrong or right decisions. There's just decisions, and whatever that is, you're gonna make it work. I want to ask a couple of questions regarding like the construction piece and the adding value to the property. I'm not too familiar with RV parks or mobile homes. What are the traps? That's all that I want to know. Like, what are the traps? Because I'm sure if I go there, I was like, oh, we can do this, and that, but I don't want to quote unquote over rehab. Well, on our side, there are some things that we need to do now, later, and there are things that we should never do because it's not going to add value. So when it comes down to this specific niche, what are the areas that will add value to the property?
So obviously, always no different than in multifamily, and it's valuable to add units. It's always going to be valuable to add more sites because you're essentially expanding your property. Another huge value add that brings in great money is the tiny homes that we just talked about, or camping cabins. Those bring in great money. I have 21 of those at that original property, and they bring in about $500,000 a year. So they bring in really great income. And those are, again, kind of the short-term stay. Even like you were talking about, so people will be not able to find a hotel room, or they want a little different experience than staying in a hotel, or maybe their friends have campers and they want to be able to go too, or grandma and grandpa's got a camper and the rest of the family wants to come. So those work really well. The glamping is this huge trend. It was this year it got up to $3 billion, and they're expecting it to grow to $6 billion. So adding whatever your glamping is going to be, whether it's tree houses or yurts or glamping tents, or I've seen remodeled buses and train cars and whatever your unique experience is. The return on your investment for those glamping units is usually 1 year. It's amazing. And the reason the return is so high is obviously they don't last as long. The glamping tents usually have a 10-year lifespan. So you're going to want that. Obviously you own the property, but that structure itself, you're going to have to start replacing the canvas and things like that. Mm-hmm. Those are always great. A laundry room. Oh my gosh, you're literally just collecting quarters. That's one of those passive, boring businesses that make great money. I am always shocked because during the pandemic, we closed the laundry rooms because there's such a small space and trying to control who can go in and go out. That was one of the things that we closed to make sure that we were staying in compliance with all the COVID stuff. And people are there for 3 days. I'm like, how many people really need to use the laundry room? Like, here for 3 days.
Right.
We got so many bad reviews of, oh my gosh, their laundry room's not open. So the amount of laundry money that you're bringing in is an awesome value add. That was one of my remodel projects over the winter. Doing economy sites, meaning a cheaper site versus a premium site. The people who who are more traveling on a budget and stuff, they really want that cheaper option. And you're using less of your land and less of your resources with those economy sites versus kind of your premium site that's going to be a whole lot longer, a whole lot wider, maybe fancy, really great outdoor space, which can be like a fire pit that's really great and brick and some great seating and things like that. My premium sites book up first. And they're almost double the cost of the economy sites. So having those different tiered options, so different in a giant multifamily, you'd want to have a 1 bedroom, some 2 bedrooms, and you've got your mix of different size units.
You know, it's interesting. Make me think about markets and think a lot about supply and demand, right? So if you're going into a new market and you're just like, okay, what's happening here? Is there new construction happening? Which some new construction is great. When it's too much or there's an influx of it, you want to think, okay, how's my property going to stand against all of these? Okay, well, has this uniqueness. What's the unique piece, the unique aspect of my asset that I'm buying or renovating, et cetera? Because we buy more existing properties than build at this point. So I'm curious though. Now I'm thinking about RV parks, from a market perspective, right? Analyzing a market. And, we think in real estate investing so much, right? What's the market? What's the market? What's the market? We can change. I always say you could participate in market, you can't change it, and that's so true for any niche. So for RV parks though, I mean, what have you seen to be, is it simpler? I mean, because if there's an existing RV park and it's like a vacation area, is there like a ton of market analysis you need to do there? Or I'm just curious to get your sense of that. I would imagine that's important on some level, but I think it's so important, right? If you're going to go buy 100, 300 unit apartment complex, which is the pool we're playing in. Curious to get your insight into that in terms of analysis of market and what pieces of it is important to kind of check off when you're, okay, this is something I do want to buy or don't want to buy. And this is why. I'm curious to get your insight into that.
So it's very different for different reasons. There could be a location that you wouldn't want a multifamily apartment because the population or the employers or the growth or whatever, but it could be a fabulous intersection between two major interstates that have amazing traffic that people are traveling on. And maybe that's going to be the type of RV park that has an average stay of 1 day, because people are literally just staying there to sleep for the night. They pull over, they pay their $50, they're staying for the night to hook up and sleep, and then they're moving on. And it might not be a great location for multifamily, but it's a really great location for, say, a hotel, the type of hotel that has 1 night stay. There's also what you're talking about with tourism. Like being in a tourist town is a very different business model. Like maybe apartment complexes for 300 units wouldn't be great in that tourist town, but putting a hotel or Airbnb unit or an RV park or glamping resort is a really great option. So oftentimes those tourist towns need more affordable housing than they do really great luxury apartments. It's market analysis is going to be very different depending on what type of park you want to have, because remember all these different types of RV parks. There's also RV parks are in literally the middle of nowhere, but they're on 300 acres and they have water parks and mini golf. And think about when we were kids and you went to Girl Scout camp. When you went to Girl Scout camp, it was never somewhere that was some really nice city, or Boy Scout camp. They're in the middle of nowhere, but they have all these really great activities. So you've created the destination itself. Those are the ones I was talking about. Make sure you can get your utilities, because property might be really great, but who knows if you can get the utilities there. So it's not necessarily the same as the kind of market analysis you're doing for multifamily.
Yeah. And it brings us back to any niche you're looking at, right? It's like there's such a need to be mindful of like the business strategy. It is a business strategy. Looking at a tourist town in the middle of nowhere is such a different strategy, right? Than finding workforce housing and creating affordable living for a mid-market, population. Totally different. And
absolutely,
they're like two different beasts. And I think what you're saying that so many people miss, I see it in our community, our investor Facebook community, our free community. And like, I see the questions, like what markets should I invest in? What are you investing in? First, let's talk about
what's
that.
Your goal? What's your goal?
So I think, we have to take a big step back and like really be mindful of that, right? Because what you're saying is a great example of one market being the best for one niche being the worst for another. And that all comes back to business strategy and having a business plan. We don't talk a lot about that enough.
We don't. And so with my glamping students, literally the first thing that we start talking about is, who's your avatar? Like, who do you think is coming here? How far are they willing to travel? What do they expect when they get here? What kind of vehicle are they going to be in? Like, are they willing to park a football field distance away to have a better, staying in a tree house, versus they need to be staying right next to it because maybe they're an older generation? What are their expectations, and what are they going to be wearing? Everything about that avatar to create the property that they're going to have.
So important. And I love what you're saying, Heather. Well, we got to have you on some sort of Andresa workshop, something. We got to pull this together, because I'm like, I want to learn more. There's
awesome. So much information.
I know. Go somewhere and have it there at the place, because I like going there and experiencing it.
Heather, thank you so much for all your insight. And we have our fabulous 3 questions Andresa's going to ask you in a second. But where can the women listening learn more about you?
Yeah. So I'm all over social media at Heather Blankenship X3, or my website at heatherblankenship.com.
Awesome. And all this information you guys can find on our show notes. Now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. And Heather, the first one is, what's the most transformational book you ever read?
You know what's interesting is normally I would tell you something totally different, but I have been reading the book, The Gap and the Gain, and it is freaking amazing because social media will change your mindset on the gap and the gain. Listening to a ton of podcasts and reading books and going to conferences, you can get stuck with what other people are doing and where you wish you were and forget how far you come. So for a really good, great mindset book, everybody needs to read that. It's awesome.
I mean, anything that Dan Sullivan put it out there, I'm like consuming immediately. Like, I don't care. What is it? I'm there. Second question is, what's the most powerful routine that you do to live a financially free and balanced life? Whatever balance means to you.
It's interesting. So I'm a single mom of 3. So there's, as you know, you don't pee alone, you don't bathe alone, you don't do anything alone.
Sure.
And I have 100% custody of those kids. So there are not any, and my mother lives in another state. So there's no alone moments. And a couple of years ago, I hired a nanny to come in during the day so that I could function and do all the things that I do. So every day at noon, I go on a walk without my phone, and I live walking distance to the beach here, but it could be even just walking around your neighborhood. And I get to have my mind to myself. And the things that I come up with to fix the problems that I have or the creativity I need for the businesses moving forward, letting our mind be still and not interrupted by the constant buzzing of our phone or our kids asking us questions, our employees, our team. That hour that I go for a walk is something that has transformed my life immensely.
I love that. Solitude is something that Liz and I have been working on, because sometimes we're like, okay, I don't know how to be still and not being connected, but that is so necessary, right? It's just amazing the benefits of the nothing time and just me, whatever I want to do.
Being alone in your own head.
Yeah. How cool is that? The last question is, which woman, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
Oh, I love Sarah Blakely. And I know that she sold recently with Blackstone and all that different stuff. But I remember being younger and seeing a picture of her with this coffee mug that says, "Be the CEO that your parents always wanted you to marry." And watching even her marriage and seeing how her husband and her are still very different people, and they get to be themselves instead of being that woman that everybody expects us to be, has been very inspirational.
I saw an interview with her husband, and he said that their first date, he didn't know who she was at that time. I don't even know if she was anything big at that time, but she was something already, and vice versa. And then she looked at him and said, "Listen, I got to tell you, and I need to tell you this right now. I make more than you." And he's like, "You don't know how much I make. It doesn't matter. I do make more than you. And you need to tell me right now if this is a problem or not." And then he's, "I'm cool. I'm cool." And then later he said, "I didn't know how much more she made it than me." But I said, "I don't care. Who cares? Who cares?" And he's super like free spirit, right? So there's such a great power couple, as you're saying, super different, but so like,
and they let each other be themselves. You'll see pictures of, he's like this raw vegan who's only eating bananas till noon or something, and she's eating her french fries and drinking her Diet Coke. Like,
exactly.
They're letting each other be themselves.
I love it.
Love it too. Heather, thank you so much for being on our show and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us and all of our listeners and all of our community. So thank you. Thank you for your time so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been
If
fun.
you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.